Welcome to Living with Sunny. Today our guest is Kireet Khurana with my colleague and partner in crime, Thomas Powers. Kireet, I will describe Kireet as a man with a purpose, a filmmaker who makes purposeful films. Kireet, if you had to describe yourself to the world in a few short sentences, what will you say about yourself? Because you won so many awards, I don't want to list them all out. You have made really, really good films. I want you to share with the world, if you describe yourself, what will you say?
First of all, thanks, Sunny and Thomas, for having me here. It's great to talk to you guys. One of the things that I'm actually a student of J. Krishnamurti. J. Krishnamurti is one of the biggest philosophers that we have in this country and, of course, in the world. Extraordinary human being. J. Krishnamurti said one thing, that truth is never stagnant. If you can pin the truth down, it's not the truth, because the truth is of every moment keeps changing. So really, that sort of, if I were to use that context, I really don't like to define myself per se. I just go with the flow. I don't like to kind of label myself or put myself in a place. But if I were to do that, I would probably say that I'm wanting to make a difference for the better through my films. And that's really what the purpose I've been sort of going ahead with. So initially, when I started my life, obviously it was all about, getting a car, getting a house, starting your own company, expanding, getting more people on board. But now I think those labels and those paradigms have shifted for me. I think my life has moved from ambition to purpose in the past sort of 10, 15 years. Gradually shifted. Of course, I had those seeds right in the beginning. In fact, even in my diploma film, I had done a film on one of the sayings of J. Krishnamurti, one of the passages of J. Krishnamurti. So yes.
So Kireet, you mentioned J. Krishnamurti. I am very familiar with the learning paradigm in the Krishnamurti schools. They got 8 or so phenomenal schools all across the world.
Yes, absolutely.
Did following the philosophy and the learnings of J. Krishnamurti been a huge influence on your life in creating the purpose that you're living with now? Because you're doing something that I feel a lot more filmmakers in India should be doing, making films and movies with purpose, hard-hitting, basically showing the truth to the country. And in the process of showing the truth, the country moves forward.
Absolutely. I can't say for the others. I can only be driven by my own desire to actually in this space. So I took on to J. Krishnamurti. We were 3 brothers, and I was the only one who actually took on to J. Krishnamurti and to philosophy and spirituality in some sense among the 3. And when I was about 14 or 15, I was already reading J. Krishnamurti. And I was trying to absorb J. Krishnamurti. I don't know why I gravitated towards that. So it was something that was innate, perhaps. Perhaps I was an old soul, or I don't know. But growing up in India during the 80s was an indifferent era. It was not as aware as we are today, because there's the internet. There's a lot of other people. You meet like-minded people. It's easier to connect with people. But around the time that I was reading J. Krishnamurti, I think all my peers, all my friends, they were dating girls, or they were talking about girls, or they were talking about, other things, money and success and other things. And for me, that didn't seem to matter all that much. Subsequently, of course, when I went to Canada, is when I started to get closer to J. Krishnamurti's teachings, because, that was the only thing that I had known from India, of course, among the things. So when I was learning, and when we got to the point where I had to make a film, a diploma film, I chose to use one of the passages from his books to actually depict an idea in a very simple way in an animation film, which went on to win the National Award, and it also won the Silver Ebensi in Austria. And it also, at that time, which was 95, 96, it also went to about 16 to 18 festivals, international festivals. So it was a big sort of breakthrough. And of course, that film also became an example uh, for a lot of PhD students. They were studying the film and they were seeking my permission to actually use it, because the film used a lot of metaphors to convey concepts and to convey conditioning and prejudice. And those were the, I mean, so it was, and it still remains my best film till date. And it doesn't really have a name. It's just a circle symbol. That's all. That's what it is.
It remains your best film, Kireet.
Yes, I mean, I consider it my best film. Not technically, but straight from the heart. Because subsequently, what happens is, you get vitiated. You a little bit of commercialization. You want to make money. You want to also fall into the material trappings, and you want to get, you want to own a car, you want to own a house, and all those things in a family, and setting up an office. Even if you have an altruistic ambition or an altruistic goal, you still need the infrastructure. And where does that come from? So it comes from advertising. It comes from making short films or making feature films, which are largely commercial in nature. So somewhere, of course, that gets diluted. But off late, recently, of course, I'm kind of finding my way back more, because money is not all that big a consideration. Pretty much my needs have been taken care of.
Kireet, that begs a question. Why don't we have more filmmakers making movies on topics like you have just now mentioned, the soft factors also? And what can we do in India, especially in India, to support such filmmakers, to encourage such filmmakers? And of course, you got the nose to the ground, so you have a much better sense of reality of, how many filmmakers are really gravitating towards this kind of movie making.
Yeah. So to answer your question, Sunny, it's very simple. The first time I told my recent documentary feature film is about, which is yet to be, I mean, it's just about in the last stage of completion, and we're already started sending it to the festivals. It's called The Invisible Visible. And it's basically about the invisibles, which is the homeless people are known as invisibles across the world. And the idea is to visibilize them or to humanize them, and to make sure that the disenfranchised and the marginalized are also seen as human beings by the others. When I proposed this idea to my executive producer, he said, "You're crazy. You just want to just burn some more money. And you're just going to, nobody's going to fund it." And I said, "Yes, I know nobody's going to fund it, because nobody's really interested. But do you think it's a story that needs to be told?" He said, "Yes, there is a story that needs to be told. This is definitely a story that needs to be told." I mean, 70 million people, Sunny, 70 million people, estimated 70 million people homeless in India. What kind of number is that? 67 million people is the population of France. You have 70 million destitute people in India. And you're telling me that there is no market for this film? What kind of market are we talking about? Who's going to stand up for them? What kind of market are we talking about? What are we talking about? I mean, there are 42 million sex workers who are, most of them are victims of human trafficking. And you're telling me there is no market for it? I know there is no market. But is it about a market? Or is it about having a heart? That's really what is important to understand here. And so my executive producer says, "You're crazy. You're just going to burn some more money and go ahead and do it. I'm going to support you, but I don't agree with your decisions of, doing this." I go ahead. I spend a few years, of course. I do advertising, and I make a feature film in between as well, which is again on a social entrepreneurship idea, which does fairly well, in fact, quite well internationally as well. And then I come back with the Invisible Visible, and he sees the film. He has no clue what I'm doing because he was not involved with it. He didn't want to get involved with it. And he's a person who has a great sense of entitlement. He has a great sense of entitlement about uh, where I mean he's a rich guy, and but he won't put his money, and he has a great sense of entitlement there. And he he cried during the film. He said, you know what, there were homeless people sitting right outside my house, and I asked the municipal corporation to move them out, and I feel so bad about it. I feel horrible about myself. And that was a moment that the film redeemed itself. I said, if I manage to transform one person, that's good. Until today, whoever sees the film says, now I notice the people on the streets. I don't invisibilize them. So that is some of the things that the film has done, and I'm glad. And the film has just started a journey. I mean, we've shown it to maybe 50 people or 70 people maybe, and we've just started sharing it with festivals like 15, 20 days ago. So the film is, as I said, it's in work in progress right now. So we're sending the work in progress version to the festivals. So, Sunny, you tell me, where does it stop? Where does it stop? I mean, what is it that we talk about a market? Of course, we need a market. Of course, we need a viability plan. Of course, but does it supersede what is actually happening there?
Kireet, can I ask you, are you driven by educating people in the pain? Are you driven by sharing the pain? What? Because everybody has this. We don't have this level in the UK, but we still have a massive amount of homeless. What's the driving force to share the stories of the destitute and the sex workers? Because this is a worldwide, international problem. And
It is, but
connected prosperity and austerity, because austerity and frugality really ended in the 1960s, and then since the 1970s it's been grow, GDP, performance, market cap, share price. But before that, we were still in frugality in the 1960s. We've had 50 years of non-stop growth, and this is the destitute
of that.
They're the exhaust of the obsession with growth.
Right. So, Thomas, let me share with you. Homelessness, like you said, is a worldwide problem. It's a worldwide phenomenon. It's not specific to one specific country, right? But the homelessness in India is very different from the rest of the world, and there's a significant difference in that. Okay, so if I'm not mistaken, in the West, it's about 0.15% of the population, 0.15% to 0.2% maximum of the percentage of the population. And most of these people are people who have had serious mental disorders or anxiety issues which have not been addressed, or they did not have family support, or they came from broken families, or they they took to drugs. So these are people who had a choice and they made certain poor choices, or maybe they didn't have a choice because of a fractious family that they were coming from, and they did not get the support that they needed. But they all have a choice to be rehabilitated and integrated. And it's just very, very small percentage of population: 300,000 people, 200,000 people, 500,000 people. That's in India. It is not mental health issues; it is poverty that is driving that. For example, you have millions of farmers who are dying, or thousands of farmers who are committing suicide, hanging themselves because they cannot pay 50,000 rupees. Now, 50,000 rupees is essentially $800 loan. And they are shamed for that. And because they suffer the guilt and they hang themselves. Many of them come to the big cities and they become the homeless people. Now, these are denotified, disenfranchised people, right? And because there are hundreds and thousands of them on that, the government decided, no, the cities are starting to look ugly because there are so many homeless people. Why don't we bring a law to control them? Now, controlling them, because they've got into drug substance abuse as well, because obviously living on the streets is not easy. And they were begging, many of them are begging, and many of them got into substance abuse. So the government decided you know what? Let's figure out a way to control them, and let's begin. Let's get a law. So a law was promulgated and passed. The law is called the Bombay Beggary Prevention Act of 1959. Now, what that act says is that if Thomas is wearing tattered clothes and he looks like a destitute and he's not begging, he can be arrested under the law, under the suspicion of beggary, because it seems like Thomas has no ostensible means of making a livelihood. And now, once Thomas is arrested, he's put into remand homes, and he can be locked up in remand homes, which are worse than jails, because there are dead bodies there are carcasses there are all kind of problems over there, and there is no water. There's it's an absolute decadent, squalid condition. I've been there inside, and what happens is that once they are in, they can be in that so-called beggars home. It's not a home, as I said. It's worse than a jail. It's a remand, so you cannot get out because it's a jail, and you can be put in there for anything between 2 years to 10 years. Now you could be a migrant worker who's making a decent, dignified living on the streets. You could be earning your money, and you could be making that daily wage so that you can fill your stomach and sleep on the street, because you can't afford the rent. But because you are sleeping on the street and you appear like you don't have any ostensible means of livelihood, you will be arrested. And there are hundreds and thousands of people being arrested every single day, put into these remand homes. They lose their jobs and livelihoods. So let's say if I am engaging some people from the road and I'm saying, listen, come and work with me, and I'm going to give you daily wages so that you can get by, and the next day he doesn't show up because maybe he's been picked up by the police and put in these remand homes, these so-called beggars homes, and he's lost his job because he's not going to come back before a month or 2 months if he's lucky. Otherwise, maybe a year, 2 years, 10 years, who knows? And so once they're out from jail, I'm not going to employ him because I say, oh, so this guy has already come from jail. I don't know what his record is. But the fact is he's been arrested under a law which is extremely draconian and very, very unconstitutional. So one of the demands that the film makes is to repeal this law.
Okay.
So
Kireet,
that's one of the.
When is the movie being released? Is it mid next year?
Yes, mid next year. Yeah, we're looking at releasing it next year.
Tell me, share with us how, of course you want as many people to see this movie as possible.
Of course.
How can people help in promoting and showcase? If somebody had the means or the resources or ways or a network, what can they do to showcase this movie to a bigger audience? How can we help?
So we are what we are trying to do is, I'd be most happy to connect with international organizations, not-for-profit organizations that are working with the homeless, because we're trying to build an international awareness of whatever is happening in India. We also try to understand what's happening in UK and US, and the homelessness issue is prevalent all across the world. But only when you're aware that, like I just shared with you, only when you're aware that problems in India are very different from the problems in UK or any of the Western world, where it is more about the individual not necessarily having the will or the courage to change things around them. India, it is very, very different. So the idea is we are connecting with homeless organizations to see how we can work with them and how to create awareness. A real fight, Sunny, honestly, right now is for us to work with the Indian government to repeal these laws, to set up shelters that are dignified, and to audit those shelters. Even where the shelters have been set up, girls have been raped and abused every single day. So where do you go if I'm a person who's homeless, and if I'm put into a shelter which is being outsourced to some NGO, and over there, if I'm a 7-year-old girl and if I'm being raped and I'm being physically abused and sexually abused every single day by men who are 40 years old, 60 years old, 50 years old, whatever, and they are people in power, where do I go? I can't be on the streets, I can't be in the shelter, I can't be wherever. So the three-pronged demand that we're trying to make, and we're trying to get stakeholders over here in India, is repeal the law. I don't think any international body can help us with that, except raise awareness through platforms like yours. We talk about, do more shows, do more talks, uh, get onto more panels, attract attention so that people are aware of the issues. That's one. The second thing is tie up with international organizations, not-for-profit organizations working in this space with the homeless. Most happy to collaborate with them. Not just me, because I don't run the NGO. I just merely brought the work of an incredible NGO, of some extraordinary people who have given their entire lives to this cause at the ground and at the advocacy level, both. So we're working with them, and we are trying to move their agenda forward. So that's number two, is to collaborate and to talk to other people across the world and see how it goes. And of course, number three is that we are trying to also uh, talk to the Indian government to say, hey, you know what, the shelters that you create need to be audited. And it's not like the change is not happening, it's happening, but there's so much of politics, and you can see the right wing upsurge across the world, and it's happening in India as well. So divisiveness and bigotry and other issues have taken priority and precedence over actual humanitarian issues and issues where we should be having empathy and love for each other. We're actually going after each other and getting after each other because of our religion or caste or our stature or many other things. I mean, there are 20,000 ways of dividing people. That's really what is happening right now, and that really hurts you. That really hurts you.
Not only filmmakers should listen to what you have to say, and of course, every filmmaker is a creative in their own right, and they have their own thought processes, they have their own formations, but they need to listen to your narrative. But more importantly, I think the younger generation should listen to your narrative because you're happy, you're purposeful, you're enjoying what you're doing, you're living a good life. Financially, you've been able to support yourself well while making a difference. And the other thing I tell, we've had these conversations, among my colleagues on the podcast, etc., is I believe that every corporate in the world, every company in the world should take ownership of a social initiative or more than one, or a partial social initiative, something they are passionate about and something they believe in. But take ownership of it. Don't write a check to a charity. Partner up with them, but you own it, because companies are the best at solving problems. Why? Because that's why they were formed in the first place, to solve a problem. If they take that ownership and perhaps they go a step further and say, we will give 10% of our profits every year, profits, not revenue, profits, because they're making money. We will give 10% of our profits towards the social problem that we own. That will cause a sea change. That 10% can be used to fund impact films like yours. The 10% can be used to just do something great for the homeless in Seattle or the homeless in Mumbai. Real world solutions to real world problems with money that you have earned working really hard, and you are best at solving problems. I think that's a commitment that every company should make to humanity and to themselves and to the customers.
Absolutely, I agree with it. And it's not it's not a new concept, it's a very old concept.
Is there one sentence of a call to action you want to mention to all our audience and to humanity? One call to action in one sentence. What would you ask?
It's very difficult. I may change that statement again and again, but right now the statement that comes to my mind is, do unto others as you would want them to do unto you. Which is there is no pride in feeling entitlement. If you were in their shoes, you would also be a homeless, and if they were in their shoes, then they'd also be entitled and having a good lifestyle like we are having. So it's really life is all about half chances, and one has to really understand and empathize with humanity around it. Just embrace everything around you. That is very important to understand. And one of the things that I want to add, of course, while I'm speaking is, no, my life is not that easy, or it's not that hunky-dory, because I struggle for funds as well, because every time I have to make a film, I have to think twice because my money comes from advertising or from other service contracts. So we're constantly kind of, our ambitions, or rather our purpose is far bigger than the amount of throughput that we get from advertising. So there is always that gap that, you can put in that much more into so many various things that are shouting aloud, waiting to be exposed or waiting to be, there's so much of explosive stuff out there which there is no awareness about. And all these causes, they really, many of them at a very alarming stages. We really need to talk about them. We need to build awareness about it. So yeah, you're right. I mean, we do need a lot more filmmakers in this zone also, apart from the fact that we need to make a lot more films.
I would ask my audience, my call to action is get involved. Get involved in supporting change makers like you. Get involved in finding real world solutions to the invisible visible. And
absolutely
like that, get involved in changing the life of one individual next year. That's how we can change the world. And that will be my ask of everybody and everybody watching us. Kireet, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's an honor to have you on this podcast, to hear your views. Keep doing what you're doing. You have our support, you have my support.
Thank you so much, Sunny. That means a lot. Yes, I will keep doing the things that I'm doing as long as I can. That's good. Thank you.
Thank you for great work, Kireet.
Thank you, Thomas. Thank you so much.
This is Living with Sunny and my partner, Thomas Power. Thank you, Kireet.